I always thought it would be really cool to have a YouTube channel where I did speed runs of old Nintendo games. I am a huge gamer and I've been playing video games my whole life. Instead, however, I have a math channel. So in this video, we're going to be doing a speed run of some of my math books. I'm going to go through every single one of these books and talk briefly about each one. If you think any of these books are interesting, check the description. I will try to leave links to all of these books. Now, some of these books are really old and they might not be available anymore, but plenty of them are still in print. This is a ton of books. The stack goes all the way to the ceiling. This first book I bought because a subscriber left a comment on the channel saying this was a good book for beginners in measure theory. So this is a graduate level book on real analysis, and it basically covers measure theory. It's what a first-year graduate student in mathematics would see. It's by Bruckner, and Thompson. And I've read only small portions of this book, and I do think it seems to be a very beginner-friendly book. Other good books on real analysis that are popular would be the ones by Rudin, Royden, and Folland. But this one is a little bit different, and I think it might be a little bit easier to read. So if you're looking for a book on measure theory that will help you get started, maybe consider this one. This book I actually read pretty much in its entirety. You can see how worn the book is and how old it is. This is the book that I used for topology as an undergraduate when I studied topology in college. The only thing I don't like about this book is that it first introduces topologies in terms of neighborhood systems. And I remember spending it felt like I was spending days trying to understand the cryptic definition in this book. I finally understood it, and looking back, it's really not that bad. But other than that, this is an amazing book, and it's a great book for beginners on topology. This book is called Counterexamples in Topology, and as the name implies, it has counterexamples in topology, and it's by Steen and Seebach. So this book is filled with strange, counterintuitive examples that are important to know when you're studying topology. This book is really inexpensive usually because it's a Dover book, and you can probably get it for not too much money. So worth having if you're looking for some really weird examples of things that really defy intuition in the field of topology. Counterexamples in Analysis. This book is really great for anyone taking advanced calculus, aka real analysis, at the undergraduate level, because it's got all kinds of weird examples involving derivatives, integrals, series, limits, etc. Things that kind of perhaps defy intuition. It has, the nice counter examples, and it's all in one book. So it's worth having if you're taking real analysis, or aka advanced calculus, at the undergraduate level. Introduction to Abstract Mathematics by Bond and Keen. This is one of my favorite books on proof writing. I like the way it's written, I like the explanations, and I like the variety of the exercises. I have worked through several of the problems in this book, both in the examples and in the exercises, and I've read a few of the sections, and I think this is probably one of the best books for learning to write proofs. Now, there's other good proof writing books out there, and I always think, obviously, it's better to have more books than less. So if you're looking for a decent proof writing book, definitely one to check out. Here we have an old book on topology. It's by Mendelssohn. It's called Introduction to Topology, and this is the second edition. And on the inside of my copy, it looks like someone signed it. Owned and cherished in that order by N. Lincoln, Fall 69. How cool. So this basically teaches you undergraduate topology, and it basically has all of the standard topics that you would expect in a typical topology course. One of the nice things about this book, despite it being old, is that it covers the core topics, theory of sets, metric spaces, topological spaces, connectedness, compactness. So it's a very concise book, and it's a very good book. So if you're looking for a topology book to help you learn, it's definitely one worth picking up. This next one is a Dover book, which means that you can probably get it for just a few dollars. This one is called Elementary, Real and Complex Analysis, and it's by George Shilov. And as the name implies, it has elementary and real complex analysis in it. So it basically has a lot of proofs involving, functions, limits, derivatives, etc. So pretty good book. It's a translation, I believe. I believe Silverman did the translation. Let's just check. Yeah, translated and edited by Richard Silverman. So this is the revised English edition. Here's a book I've had for several years. This is Graph Theory by Ronald Gould. And this is an introductory book on graph theory. So the entire book is actually on graph theory. A lot of times nowadays when you study graph theory at college, they use books on discrete mathematics, which cover other topics as well. But this book is pretty much devoted to graph theory. It starts with graphs and it goes on from there. So really nice book if you're looking to learn graph theory. Here we have an interesting book on differential geometry. And this book was written by a Harvard professor. His name was William C. Grosstein, professor of mathematics, Harvard University. And so the only prereq for this book is that you have a strong calculus background. You want to know calculus 1, calculus 2, calculus 3. So you want to know how to find partial derivatives and stuff like that. And once you have a strong multivariable calculus background and perhaps just a small proofwriting background, this is a pretty decent book on the subject, differential geometry. And again, this is the one by Grosstein. Here's a book by the famous Serge Lang. This is Analysis 1, and I'm a huge Serge Lang fan. I especially like his algebra books, Linear Algebra, and his book titled Algebra. I think he is a great writer, and this book is no exception. So Serge Lang was a famous mathematician who wrote a ton of books. I don't know how many, but he has written so many books. He was very, very prolific. There was a joke, and I don't know if it's true, they would say that he would go on a cruise, and while on a cruise, he would write a book. I read that somewhere on the internet, so I don't know if it's true or not, but still a fun story to share. Great book, though, on Analysis 1. Here's a really psychedelic-looking book cover. This is Galois Theory by Emil Artin, and this book is so small, it's like a pamphlet. It's almost like a little flyer you would pick up at a bus terminal, but it's not. This is the work of Emil Artin. He is the father of Michael Artin, who teaches or taught at MIT. I'm not sure if he still teaches there. And it basically covers Galois theory. It is a very readable book. You can read a lot of it and understand a lot of it. And basically, these are based off of his notes that he created when he was teaching at the University of Notre Dame. So lots of info there. Really cool book. It's a Dover book. I've had this book for years, and it's probably really inexpensive because it's a Dover book. Look at that cover. I think it's worth having just for the cool cover. This is a book I've spent a lot of time with. It's called Modern Algebra, an Introduction, and it is by Durbin. And this one is the second edition. And this book reads really well. I've done a few of the exercises and I've read a couple of the sections from it. And I like the layout of the book. The layout is a little bit different from other algebra books. And also it has some specialized topics. For example, it has a whole chapter on symmetry and it talks about crystallographic groups. So kind of something you wouldn't see in another abstract algebra book. And again, the layout is a little bit different. So I think it's a very well-written book. I'm surprised it's not more popular, and I think it's a really good book for beginners. Again, this one is Modern Algebra, and it's by John Durbin. This is a book by the legendary Terence Tao. This is Analysis 2. I actually have Analysis 1 as well, but this stack of books was randomly selected from my bookshelves, so I don't know if I have Analysis 1 in this packet. So this is a really interesting book because it's written by Terence Tao, and it reads a little bit differently than other analysis books. I think if you want to read some of Tao's work, get this book. It's a pretty good book on analysis. When it came out, it was widely popular, and I still think it's a great book today. This is a really interesting book that I bought because someone left a comment in the channel. It's called The Language of Mathematics, and it's by Frank Land. And let me just show you the contents because it's a little bit different. By the way, this one is from the library of the University of Illinois, and you can see people have been checking it out for a very long time. Looks like 88. Oh, does that say 69? Wow, 1969. Wow, that's a long time ago. 70s, 75, 82, 87, and 91. Wow, so we're looking at the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s. So this book has helped people for 4 decades. That is just amazing. That's really incredible. So here's the contents. You can see it talks about systems of units, extending the number system, algebra. So it's basic mathematics, but it's explained in a really interesting way, and it's just not written like other math books. I think it's worth picking up if you're looking for something a little bit different. And this book in particular has helped people for 4 decades. This is a book on number theory, and it's by George Andrews, and it's a Dover book, so it's probably fairly inexpensive. And I'm pretty sure it's a reprint of an older book, and it's meant to be an introductory book on the theory of numbers. So it starts off with divisibility, and it's pretty easy to read at the beginning of the book, but the further that you get in, it does get more challenging, which is true for most math books. So I think it's a decent book if you're trying to learn number theory. This is a book I have spent a lot of time with, and I have done a lot of the exercises from this book. This is Complex Variables, Introduction and Applications, and it is by Ablowitz and Focus. And I use this book for a graduate level course in complex variables. So great book. It's got a lot of really hard problems. Look how thick it is. I mean, it's a really thick book. And it's almost too thick. It's so thick that, look, see that? So it doesn't lay flat. So that is my only complaint. Oh, that's pretty good. But if I turn the page, yeah. Otherwise, it's a great book. It's got a lot of math in it, more than what you would see in an undergraduate level course. Here's a book by Serge Lang. Serge Lang wrote so many books, and this is a first course in calculus by Serge Lang. I love this book. I love the way it reads. I think it's great for beginners. I think it's a really good beginner book for calculus. You're going to find it reads very differently from modern books like the books by Larson and Stewart. And it's just, oh, it smells great. I gotta whiff it. Oh, smells so good. The biggest downside to this book is that some people think it's too easy. So like the problems aren't that challenging, right? They're pretty simple. Like here you're being asked to find the derivative. So the level of difficulty on the problems is pretty easy, but the way it's written is very, very smooth, and I'm just a huge Lang fan, so I had to have it. This is an awesome topology book for several reasons. So one, it's a Dover book, so you could probably get it fairly inexpensively. Two, it is very standard in terms of its topics. So if you're taking a course on topology, the contents of this book go really well with what you would study in a regular course. And three, it actually has solutions to all of the exercises, including the proofs. That's right. So this is a topology book with full solutions. This is extremely rare. In fact, I don't know of another topology book in existence that has full solutions. If someone knows, please let me know. But you see, you've got all kinds of, hints and full solutions to the proofs. So yeah, very, very nice. Look at that. Wow. What is going on there? Let gamma be a simply closed curve in C. Okay, wow. So they show you everything in this book. This is a book on real and functional analysis, but this is actually just part B. So it only covers functional analysis. I'm going to open it up so you can see the topics. And it's a very standard treatment. It's the typical topics that you would study in a functional analysis course. So it starts with Banach spaces, Hilbert spaces, and then spectral theory. So just the treatment of functional analysis. So if you're taking functional analysis, this might be a good supplement. This is a really interesting book because it's a problem book for linear algebra. It's called Linear Algebra, Challenging Problems for Students, and it's by Zhang. And basically, it's got a couple sections in the book. So you've got vector spaces, determinants, inverses, rank, and linear equations, matrices, linear transformations, and eigenvalues, special matrices, and inner product spaces. And then, notice that it stops at page 71, but look how big the book is. It's because he spends a huge part of the book showing you all of the solutions to all of those problems. So you have worked out solutions and hints to pretty much every single problem in this book. So it's a good problem book for linear algebra. Like if you're looking for extra linear algebra problems with solutions, you can find them in here. And some of them are pretty tough. This is an entire book on combinatorics. It's called Applied Combinatorics, and it's by Alan Tucker. I've had this book for several years. Let me just briefly show you the contents. Typically, when people study combinatorics nowadays, the modern books that are used are discrete math books because they cover combinatorics and graph theory. So it starts off with some set theory, induction, then some general counting stuff, then generating functions, and then recurrence relations. Then he goes on to the inclusion-exclusion principle, Pauli's enumeration formula, some graph theory, some trees and searching, and some algorithms. So a lot of these topics are also found in discrete math books, and I think that's why people use discrete math books nowadays to teach those classes. And you do have solutions to some of the problems as well. So I think it's a good choice if you're studying combinatorics and you're looking for a supplement, or maybe you want to do some self-study. It's a pretty good book. Learning how to write proofs is one of the hardest things for a math major to do, and it takes a lot of practice and time. And this book, How to Prove It, A Structured Approach by Vellman, is a pretty good way to help you learn that process. The book is, very wordy. He goes through and explains everything in detail, but I think that's sometimes what people need. People need a book that explains everything to them. So It's a pretty good book on learning to write proofs. So if you're looking for a proofwriting book, I have several, and this one is pretty good. It's called How to Prove It. This is a really old book that someone actually gave me. It's called Sets with Applications, and it's by Zena. And I got this for free from someone that I used to work with, and they were giving away some books, and so I said, okay, I'll take them. So Peter Zena, U.S. Naval Postgraduate School, that's the person who wrote it, 1966. That was a long time ago. And basically this covers topics that you would typically see like in a discrete math course in college. Sets and classes, relations and functions, mathematical theory, set algebra. It's very beginner level, and then some probability theory. So nice book for beginners, really, really old. You can see the person who owned this before me did all kinds of work in this book. This is the book that they used to learn. Here's a book on real analysis that you've probably never heard of. It's by Nicholas K. Artemidius. I believe I said that correctly, not sure. And it's basically real analysis. It covers measure theory and a ton of other topics. It's a really thick book, and the font and the typesetting is really, really weird. So very different from a lot of the modern books. I mean, very, very different. So I'm not even sure where I got this, but I've had it for a long time. So yeah, there it is. Real Analysis by Nicholas K. Artemidius. I like this book. It's called A First Course in Probability, and it's by Sheldon Ross. And I like this book because the entire book is on probability, and it gives a rigorous treatment. Let me just show you the contents because I think you'll be impressed. So this one was written in 1976. Starts off with combinatorics, then it goes on to probability, and then some more probability and independence, random variables, continuous random variables. So here you might need some calculus. In fact, you will need some calculus. And then jointly distributed random variables, expectation, and then limit theorems. And then some additional topics in probability. So if you want to see how calculus intertwines with probability, you're going to see it here. Already, look, here you have an integral and stuff. So great book. If you're taking a class on probability, this is worth having, especially if it's a calculus-based class. This is actually a pretty good book on differential equations. In particular, it's on partial differential equations in engineering problems, and it's by Miller. And it looks like the U.S. Army used to own this book. Property of U.S. Army. Really hardcore, right? So, wow. And it was written in 1953, so I've read small portions of this book, and it reads extremely well. So, nice book for partial differential equations. If you're trying to learn it, you can pick up this book and you'll probably understand quite a bit of it if you know some calculus. This is one of the first math books I ever bought. I actually bought this, I think I was in Calculus 1 when I bought this, and it's called Applied Complex Variables, and it's by Detman. And I remember the first time I was reading this book, I was sitting at the dentist, and I sat down and I read this book and I thought, this is really cool. I really like math, and I wasn't a math major at the time yet, but this book kind of really helped spark my interest. And it's just a complex variables book, standard textbook, covers all the standard topics. The good thing about it is it's fairly affordable because it's a Dover book. Here's a really nice book on discrete math. It's called Introductory to Discrete Mathematics, and it's by Balakrishnan. And this one is a Dover book, which means you can probably get it relatively inexpensive, and it's got tons of problems in it, and I think it's a pretty good book. It reads fairly well. Some parts read better than others. It's very concise, and I think it's a great supplement if you're taking a discrete math course. This is a book that I have spent a great deal of time with. This is Linear Algebra, and it is by Friedberg, Insel, and Spence. And I think that this is a book that every single linear algebra student should own because this book has tons of linear algebra in it. It's very easy to use the index to find things that you're looking for. So like if you need to refer to your old linear algebra content, you can pick up this book, look in the index. Oh, okay, that's what that means. Oh, okay, that's what that theorem said. And it's all in this book, and it's laid out in a very, very nice, organized fashion. There are tons of exercises in this book. Unfortunately, there are not, tons of solutions, but the exercise choice is incredible, and the book reads fairly well. It's a very rigorous book, and yeah, it's a rigorous book on linear algebra that is extremely comprehensive and is an awesome reference. I highly recommend this book to everyone. This is a really old book on algebra, and it's a problem book. It actually just has exercises in algebra. And in fact, that's what it's called. It's called Exercises in Algebra, and it's by Robbins and Somerville, and I'm pretty sure this is leather. I think that's leather. I'm just going to smell it. Yeah, I think that's leather. Let me open it up so you can see it. And it was published in 1904. Wow, that's a long time ago. And it basically just has exercises in basic algebra, like not abstract algebra, just like basic algebra. Like combining like terms, simplifying, dividing. It's got tons of exercises, so it's a nice way to get lots of exercises if you're looking for exercises to do for practice, or if you're a teacher and you're looking for exercises to assign. Yeah, just kind of fun to have books that are super old. This is a book I bought when I took discrete math as a supplement. It's called Discrete Mathematics, and it's the Shams Outline series. And I think it's pretty good. It's got some decent examples in here that you can use if you're trying to get better at discrete math. It's a Shams, so you're going to get tons of work problems. This is an entire book on plane trigonometry, and this is the one by Rice and Strange. And this is a really good book on trigonometry. I love the cover. Let's open it up. Looks like it's got like some old school VHS or Maxwell tape type things. Yeah, VHS. Old school. And it's basically, you know, a nice trig book. So if you're taking trig or you're struggling with trig, it's worth picking up a couple old trig books, and this is one of those books. Here's a book I bought when I was an undergraduate. One of my professors told me that I should get this book, so I bought it. And there was an error online, and I ended up paying like $7 for it or something, so I got really, really lucky. This book is very interesting. The proofs are given in great detail in the book, so he goes through incredible detail to justify everything. It's really quite interesting, and a lot of the results are often given in generalities. So like instead of showing that the intersection of two sets is, you know, some object, he'll show that the finite intersection is, you know, some object. So he does everything in generalities, which is kind of interesting. It's got a lot of good exercises. And again, if you're looking for something that goes through all the details in the proofs, this is a pretty good one. It's called Concepts in Abstract Algebra by Lansky. This is a really old book, and it's on algebraic topology, and it is by Wyburn. And I think this is a very good book. It's nice to find an algebraic topology book. There's several out there, but this one is really old school. It was written in the 40s, and I think it's a good introduction to algebraic topology. So if you know some topology and you know your math maturity is at a very high level, then you can use this book to jump into the world of algebraic topology. Here's an old book on the theory of sets, and this one was a gift. It's by Joseph Brewer. So this book was given to me by a friend long ago, and it basically covers the theory of sets. It starts with finite sets, infinite sets, ordered sets, point sets. It's just all sets. And then there's a conclusion. So it's an entire book on set theory. So my friend gave me this, and now I have it. So if you're looking for a book on sets, this one's pretty good. This is a really old book on number theory. This is the one by Long. I spent a long time with this book, working through the problems and reading through the explanations. And it's written like an old book. It has that, just it has a different way that it's written. You know, it's a little bit more elegant, I think, than a lot of the newer books. Let me just see if I can show you, like, here we go. From time to time, as our development proceeds, we shall have occasion to use special notation to simplify the writing of sums and products. Just very, very different from modern books. So I've done a lot of the exercises from this book. Apparently I did every single one here in the first section. And they're pretty fun, and the book smells great. I'm pretty sure it's still in print. I'm gonna whiff it. Yeah, I love this book. I've had it for a long time, and I've referenced it. It's one of my favorite number theory books. This book is a really good example of when buying used books goes wrong. So I buy a lot of used books, and this one was a bit of a disappointment. So the book itself is really good. It's a standard linear algebra book by Larry Smith. And look what happens when I open it. Oh, it's falling apart. So that's what happened with my copies. So it's a little bit disappointing. I have used this book a little bit. I have read small portions, but because my copy is torn, I have not spent a lot of time with it. So maybe I should get another copy. Anyways, Linear Algebra by Larry Smith. Here's a book that's good if you want to learn like some Calculus 3, aka multivariable calculus. So if you're taking a Calc 3 course and you're looking for like a supplement, this one's pretty good. It's called Calculus of Several Variables, and it's by Adams. And it has a very, you know, modern treatment of the subject, so it should go really well with what you're learning in your calculus classes. Here's another wonderful book by the legendary H.B. Phillips. H.B. Phillips used to be the head of the Department of Mathematics at MIT back in the day, and this is his differential equations book, and it is a pleasure to read. I'm a big fan of H.B. Phillips' work. H.B. Phillips books have the solutions to all of the problems in the back of the book, which is something that you don't see anymore. So you get all the standard content that you need in a differential equations class, and you get answers to all of the actual problems. Let me just show you on the back here where you can find the answers. There's some work that someone did. Let's go back a little further here. So you see you have answers to all of the problems, which is really, really cool. So yeah, big fan of this book by H.B. Phillips. So this is 2 books in one. This is a book written by H.B. Phillips. It's Differential and Integral Calculus. And Phillips was a professor at MIT, and I believe he was the head of the department shortly after arriving there. So here it says associate professor, but I'm pretty sure he became the department head. And this book was published in 1916, and it is incredible. I'm a big fan of all of the books by H.B. Phillips. I feel like his work has been lost in some sense. You know, it's all out of print, I think, but I'll try to leave links in the description if I can find it. And then this one, this is the Integral Calculus book. Let me just open it here so you could see it. Integral Calculus, and this one was in 1917. And here are other books by H.B. Phillips. I think this book is great. It has answers to all of the exercises, which is very, very rare. So be careful here to show you, but you see all of the exercises actually have answers, and that's one of the things I like about his books. So yeah, really, really just a rare masterpiece. Here's an old book I've had for quite some time. It's called Elements of Complex Analysis, and it's by Shonish and Green. I hope I said the names correctly. And I really like this book. I'm surprised it's not more popular. It's a complex analysis book, but the topics are a little bit different. The orders are different. Starts off with algebraic and topological preliminaries, and I've read this entire section, and it basically goes through and talks about sets and functions and everything you need, even some topology, in order to study higher math. And then it goes into complex analysis, right? Talks about complex differentiable functions, etc. So if you're taking a complex analysis or complex variables course, I think this one is a really good supplement. I really like this book. Again, it's Elements of Complex Analysis. I can talk about this book for hours, but I won't. So this is Advanced Calculus by Buck, and I have done a ton of problems from this book, and I have read big portions of this book. It is a great book. It's an introduction to advanced calculus, and it treats advanced calculus with both single and multivariable examples at the same time, right from the beginning, and it's just fantastic. It's got all kinds of problems in it. Some of them are easier, some of them are very hard. And it's a great reference because it has so many topics in it. I think this is much better than the book by Rudin, and it's a must-have for anyone learning undergraduate analysis, aka advanced calculus. It's the one by Buck. This is Linear Algebra by Serge Lang. I love this book. I love the way it's written. I love the way he writes the proofs. I think it's a very clean exposition to linear algebra, and the book smells wonderful. I have to smell it. Ah, yeah, just amazing. So great book. I have read various portions of this book. I've worked out some of the exercises. It's great. The biggest con to this book, the biggest downside, is that I don't feel that it serves as a good reference. I think the book by Friedberg is a better reference than this book by Lang. In any case, if you're looking for a clean explanation of linear algebra, this is one worth getting. Here's a classic book that I did a book review on a while ago. This is Calculus Made Easy, and it's by the legendary Thompson. And it's a great book. It just reads really well. It's very different from other calculus books. It's just written in a different way. It's not written like a regular textbook. So it's a fun book to read if you kind of just want to sit down with a paper and pencil and read and learn a little calculus a different way than you would in your other textbooks. This is the book for you. So no other calculus book is written in this particular way, and that's what makes this book special. This is the book that I used to learn advanced calculus, and I used this for 2 semesters as an undergraduate. You can see how worn and beat this book is. When I was a student, I hated this book. It wasn't until after I was in the class that I realized that this book is actually pretty good, and it's actually very, very easy compared to other books. Here you see I have done all of these problems. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 13, and 14. So I've worked out all of those problems when I was in the course. These must have been homework problems or problems that I just did for practice, but great book. It's a great treatment. I highly recommend it. And if you buy it and you're stuck, believe me, it just takes time, right? You will learn to love this book. This is a really old book on complex variables, and it's really old. It's by Townsend. It's called Functions of a Complex Variable, and it covers all of the standard things that you would study as an undergraduate, studying complex variables. However, some of the notation is a little bit outdated and it is a little bit terse. It's hard to read, but if you're interested in seeing what an old book on complex variables is like, this is something to consider. This book is so famous, it has a nickname. People call it Baby Rudin. This is Principles of Mathematical Analysis. And so I bought this book when I was an undergrad because I was told that this was a legendary book. And it is a legendary book. It is extremely terse. I have a friend who has his PhD in math, and when he was an undergrad, he read this entire book from the beginning to the end. He didn't do the exercises, but he read through the entire book. So yeah, it's a really hard book to read through. It's a great reference, and I feel like you have to own it, right? Like if you're studying analysis, you have to have Baby Rudin. It's called Principles of Mathematical Analysis, and it's by Walter Rudin. This is one of the best books on proof writing, if not the best. It's hard to say this is the best book, but it's definitely up there. This one's called A Transition to Advanced Mathematics, and it's by Chartrand, Palamini, and Zhang, and it's got tons of examples. The reason I like this book so much is because it has so many examples of proofs in the actual book. And he has like a proof strategy, so like the result to prove, the proof strategy, and then the proof, and then a proof analysis. So he's going through and like, you know, this is what we're trying to prove, this is how we're going to do it, here's the proof, and then now let's reflect on our proof. What happened in our proof? And I think this is a really good thought process to get into when you're learning to write proofs. So fantastic book. I recommend this book to everyone who wants to learn to write math proofs. It's one of the best ones out there. This is a masterpiece of a book. This is Algebra by Michael Artin, and this is the Eastern Economy edition. So I got this one because it was less expensive, but there's other editions you can get. Like I'm pretty sure there's a hardcover of this book out there. I'll try to find a link in the description. And basically, this is an abstract algebra book, and it's very focused on linear algebra. So he has a lot of examples with linear algebra. Here he talks about linear groups. So it's very different from other abstract algebra books. It reads extremely well. The only con to this book, I think, is that as a reference, I don't think it's as good as, say, like the book by Dummett and Foote. In any case, it's a pleasure to read. It's got great exercises. Some of them are extremely challenging. I think it's a great book. It's Algebra by Michael Artin. By the way, his father was also a mathematician, and his name was Emil Artin. This is one of the better Shams outlines. This is the one on differential equations, and basically it has tons of worked examples. And look at that. Apparently I did that one at some point because it's scratched out. So it's got worked examples, and it goes along really well with what you would study in a differential equations course. So it works out to be a great supplement. This is a book that changed the way calculus books were written. So it's called The Calculus with Analytic Geometry by Louis Leithold. And Louis Leithold was an inspiration on the guy from the movie Stand and Deliver. So the main character in that movie, who was played by Edward James Olmos, his name was Jaime Escalante, and Louis Leithold was an inspiration for the legendary Jaime Escalante. So the guy was an inspiration for many people. And this is a calculus book that is written with the student in mind. So it explains everything very, very carefully. And it's the first book to become popular of its kind. So it really changed the world. It changed the way calculus books were written. Nowadays, most calculus books are written in this fashion where they try to explain things. But this is the first book. This is the book that started that trend. So if you're looking for an old book, if you can find it, that explains calculus really well, check this one out. It's pretty hard to find, but I'll try to leave a link in the description. One of the better Shams is this one. This is General Topology, Shams Outline, and this one is really good because it goes along really well with what's taught in an actual undergraduate college course. So I think it's a must-have for anyone taking topology. I bought this when I was a student taking topology, and I used it because I would do exercises from this book when I was studying for the test for additional practice. So great book, and it works as a great supplement. This is the Shams outline on set theory and related topics. Let me just show you the topics so you see what exactly is covered in this particular Shams outline. And I'm a fan of Shams outline because they have tons of work examples and they're inexpensive, so they're not like super expensive books. Starts off with sets, and then sets and the real numbers, relations, functions, further theory of sets and functions. And then part 2 is on cardinal numbers. So you see it really gets into sets here. ordered sets and lattices, ordinal numbers, the axiom of choice. And part 3 is on some other related topics. You do some logic, and then there the book starts. So pretty good book on set theory and related topics. This is a book that I have read almost in its entirety because I have used this book to actually teach differential equations, and it's the one by Dennis Zill. And I would say it's a very good book for beginners. It's got great exercises and decent explanations. I'm a big fan of this book because I have used it to teach for so many years. And yeah, I recommend it. It's a great book. It's Differential Equations, and it's the one by Zill. This is a very standard book on algebra. It's called College Algebra, and it's by Coburn, and this is the instructor's edition. And this is a good book if you're looking for an algebra book. Like if you want to learn basic algebra, this is a great textbook to have. It's got solutions to some of the problems, and it's got plenty of exercises. So you can buy this book and then just start doing some math. This is Combinatorics, including concepts of graph theory. This is the Shams outline. And this one's great for anyone taking either combinatorics or graph theory, or perhaps the combined course. I myself took the combined course. It was called Combinatorics and Graph Theory. And so I went online and I bought this book. Oh, it's dedicated to Paul Erdos. Yeah, Paul Erdos was a legend of a mathematician. And so basically this book covers combinatorics and graph theory. It starts off with basic counting tools, some more counting tools, generating functions and recurrence relations, and then graph theory and combinatorics. Honestly, if you're taking a discrete math course, a lot of these topics will come up, so it also serves as a good supplement for a class like that. This is probably the most popular calculus book in the entire world. This is Calculus by James Stewart, and this is the 5th edition. I used the early Transcendentals version when I took calculus as a student, and I picked this one up, I don't know where, but it looks really, really new, and it is thick and it is full of awesome exercises and really good explanations. As a student reading the Stewart books, I did struggle sometimes, but that's normal. You're going to struggle with every math book. So I think this is a great book, and I think that every calculus student should have a physical copy of this great book by the legendary James Stewart. This is the book that I have used to teach pre-calculus, trigonometry, and also a combined course on pre-calc and trig in college. And it's by Hornsby, Lyle, and Roxwold. It's called The Graphical Approach to Algebra and Trigonometry. And I think this is an excellent book. This is the instructor's edition, and it's just got tons of exercises, and for me, that's the biggest thing. And the explanations are actually pretty good as well. So great book for learning, great for self-study. I have done tons of problems from this book. Yeah, I like it a lot. This is a classic book which I have yet to review. It is called Concrete Mathematics, A Foundation for Computer Science. It's by Graham, Knuth, and Patashnik. And it's a discrete math book, and I would say it's a little bit more challenging than other discrete math books. But the fact that it is written by Knuth, to me, makes this a book worth owning. Knuth is a legend in the field of computer science, and I think all of his books are incredible. This is a standard calculus book. It's called Calculus and Its Applications, and it's by Bettinger, Ellenbogen, and Surgeon. And this is a modern book. This is the instructor's edition. And it's just a good book if you're trying to learn calculus. It's got tons of exercises and pretty decent explanations. And it's got topics from Calc 1, Calc 2, and Calc 3. This is a beautifully written differential equations book that you've probably never heard of. It's by Larry Andrews, and it's fantastic. It's written at a very, very beginner level, and the explanations are very clear, and there are tons of exercises. So in my view, that makes it a great book for self-study and for learning differential equations. Again, this one is called Ordinary Differential Equations, and it's by Andrews. This is a really popular book on discrete math that is being used today to teach discrete math at colleges, and it is called Discrete Mathematics and Its Applications, and it is the one by Rosen. So I spent a great deal of time with this book. When I was taking discrete math, I would read portions of this book, and I would do exercises from this book to help me learn the material. And I ended up doing really well in the course, and I don't know if it was because of this book, but I would say this is a standard textbook. There's some good parts, there's some bad parts. It's just a standard discrete math book with a great selection of exercises. This is a book on discrete and combinatorial mathematics, and it is by Grimaldi, and I have spent a ton of time with this book. I have worked through various exercises, and I've read various sections, and I would say that this is a pretty good discrete math book, and it's very standard. It's used at various colleges in the US, and it's a very popular book. It's well written, but you're gonna get stuck. Discrete math is a hard topic, and I think this book is, I would say, a standard book. This is a book on proof writing, so this is a book that you would buy if you wanted to learn to write proofs on your own. So you would buy this book, you would sit down with a paper and pencil, and you would try to read it, and you would get stuck, but that's normal. And you could skip around from section to section and learn different things. It's kind of a fun book because it gives you an introduction to higher level math with a book like this. This book was written by the legendary Israel Nathan Herstein and is called Topics in Algebra. Yeah, this is awesome. So this is the Herstein book on algebra. I'm going to open it up. Yeah, wow. Wow, look at the pages. Oh, yeah, Herstein, University of Chicago. And there's the topics. So it's an abstract algebra book. Starts with group theory, ring theory, vector spaces and modules, fields, and then linear transformations, and then some selected topics. So old school book on algebra written by a legendary mathematician. It's kind of one of those must-haves. Yeah, really cool book. So this is Royden's book on real analysis. This is a classic book on real analysis. It is not an easy read, but nevertheless, it is a good read, and real analysis is a hard subject, and it's a must-have. If you're trying to learn real analysis at the graduate level, you want to basically have every real analysis book you can get your hands on so that you can try to read and learn and do as many problems as possible, and that way the material will eventually sink in. So great book, worth having if you are learning real analysis. This is a great book on probability. It's called The Probability Companion for Engineering and Computer Science. And this is a newer book, and it's got really good explanations and really good exercises with solutions. This is Undergraduate Topology by Casriel, and so someone I know recommended this book, so I picked it up. And it's really well written. I think this is a really good book for beginners. So if you're a beginner and you're trying to learn topology, I think that this book covers all of the standard topics in a really good order, and it does a really good job explaining everything. So great book for beginners learning topology. This is a modern algebra book for people who are trying to learn algebra. So this is typically used in colleges in courses where elementary algebra is being taught. Oftentimes the names for those courses are things such as intermediate algebra. And this has tons of exercises, and because this is the instructor's edition, it's got the solutions, but the regular edition won't have solutions to all the problems. It'll probably have solutions to just the odd problems. In any case, this is a modern book on algebra, so it's a good choice if you're trying to refresh your old algebra skills. Here's a book you've probably never heard of. It's by Harold Stone. It's called Discrete Mathematical Structures and Their Applications. And this book was published in the early 70s, I believe 1973. Yeah, 73. And it's just really interesting because it's an older discrete math book. You don't see a lot of these being used today anymore. I don't know if this book is still in print. So if you're looking for a different take on discrete math, maybe pick up a copy of this really old book. This is a legendary book written by the legendary Paul Halmos. It's called Finite Dimensional Vector Spaces. And basically, this is a linear algebra book. I bought this book because it was recommended on the internet, and I was very, very happy with it. So Paul Halmos was a very famous mathematician and a very good teacher. And this is almost like a piece of history. I mean, it is a piece of history. It is a book by the legendary Paul Halmos. This is a calculus book from the early 80s. It's called Single Variable Calculus, and it's by Robert Adams. It's got a really nice, thick cover. It feels really well made. And it's basically a book on calculus of functions of one variable. It's got all of the standard topics that you would still see today in a Calc 1 course and a Calc 2 course. So nice book. It's got plenty of examples, and it comes with answers to all of the odd-numbered exercises. This is the book that I actually used when I was a student taking differential equations. This is Differential Equations and Boundary Value Problems by Nagel, Saff, and Snyder. So this version has some extra sections. I'm pretty sure there's just differential equations as well. And this is a great book. It's got good examples. It's got good exercises. It's a standard book on differential equations. So I've read various sections and I've done a ton of problems from this book, and I think it's a pretty good choice if you're trying to learn differential equations. Sham's Outlines of Finite Mathematics. This is great for someone who is taking a discrete math course and is looking for a supplement. And so this is an older edition. There are newer editions available, but here you can see the contents. So propositions and truth tables, algebra of propositions, conditional statements, arguments, set theory, product sets, relations, functions, vectors, matrices. So all the typical topics you would study in a finite math class or a discrete math class, and more, right? This is going to have more than what you cover in any one particular class because it's a Sham's Outlines. So Sham's Outlines have answers to a lot of the problems, which is really cool. This is Topology by Moncrief, and this is the Eastern Economy edition. So I bought this one because I saved a little bit of money by getting this version of the book. And this is the standard for topology. Like, it's a very, very popular book on topology. It's a great reference book. It's got all of the standard, knowledge that you need to learn in a topology course. So it serves as a great reference. So if you're looking for a standard topology book that is widely used, this is definitely a great book. This is a really weird book, but it's also kind of fun. So it's called Professor Emis Squared's Calculus Primer, and it's like calculus with like little comic book characters and stuff. It's really interesting. If you're into comic books or you're looking for something like a little bit more fun, you can check this out. I first heard about this many years ago. Someone left a comment in one of my videos and I was like, what is that? So I went online and I bought the book and I got it. It's really very different. It's just nothing you will ever see is like this. This is a really big, thick book on calculus. This is a modern book. It's called Calculus Early Transcendentals, and it's by Briggs, Cochrane, Gillette, and Schultz. And you can use this book for Calc 1, Calc 2, and Calc 3. So if you're taking calculus or you want to learn calculus, you could certainly learn it from this book. And it's very comparable to the content that you would see in the books by Stewart and Larson. So just a really big, thick calculus book. Everyone should have one big, thick calculus book, at least one. I think more books is better. But yeah, this covers everything you would see in Calc 1, Calc 2, and Calc 3. Wow, that was a lot of books. I didn't expect this video to be so long, but we just went through every single one of these books. Hopefully after this video, you have an idea of the different types of math books that are out there and all of the choices you have. And again, these are just some of my books. There's tons of books out there. There's all kinds of great books on mathematics. And I always think it's really good to have more than one book because you never know when you're going to need a math book. I hope this video has been helpful to someone. Good luck.